All right. Hello, hello. Welcome. Happy Tuesday night. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month as well to those of you that are joining us. We're going to give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we're going to kick off our exciting conversation this afternoon. Dr. C, in the spirit of Hispanic Heritage Month, what's your favorite thing? What's your favorite cuisine or favorite dish from the Latino community?
Tamales.
Stop! I was just about to say that.
Really?
Yes. We make tamales for Christmas as a family.
Oh,
We
that's
have an assembly
beautiful.
line and yeah, each person has a job, and that's what we have for Christmas Eve.
Oh, I love that story.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm a fan.
they're fantastic. Not totally certain that they have a lot of zinc. We were just talking about that, but they're certainly fantastic.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up. There's so many Hispanic Heritage festivals and celebrations happening at different schools across the city. I know I was at a school today on the west side, and they're having this big event on September 26th. And there's so many different schools that have these incredible celebrations this month. So I'd encourage you guys to all check those out.
Yeah, I agree. There's lots of great things. There's also some great things since in the spirit of talking to teachers, we've got a Latinx Educator Summit coming up on the 21st as well. So we'll make sure if you're on tonight, if you're following Teach Indy, you should get that information. But yeah, I want to just encourage everyone to be connected to all of the great things that are happening across the city. And with that, Dr. C, I think we should get started. What do you think?
Let's do it. Excited. So excited to be here today.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. For those people that don't know me, my name is Sarah Marshall, and I'm the executive director here at Teach Indy. Teach Indy is a nonprofit that works across Marion County to think about how we might support, develop, and elevate the educators as the experts that they are. We are thrilled to be joined tonight by some incredible teachers. We love these teacher conversations because teachers often don't want to step up and say, hey, I'm an expert. And we're always like, yes, you are. You're absolutely the expert. So we're excited that you all are going to get to hear from our experts this evening. This is part 2 of our conversation. And we're just really excited to have you join us. So if you're joining us online, feel free to leave us a comment, leave us some questions throughout the session so that we can bring you into the conversation if you're joining us live and listening. So with that, here's what I'd love for you to do if you're joining us online. I'd like for you to say what your name is if you're a teacher, where do you teach, and then drop us an emoji that describes how you feel about parent-teacher conference. So just to have a little bit of fun, drop us an emoji, let us know what you're experiencing, and then we'll have a little bit of fun today too. Without further ado, I'm going to toss things over to Dr. Carlotta Cooprider. She has served Indiana in a myriad of ways. She's one of my favorite education leaders here in the city. So for over 25 years, she's worked in multiple roles including being a teacher herself, an administrator, and a consultant. And she's done work with the Indiana Department of Education. She's been the dean of a graduate school of education. And really, she is one of the top people, I think, in thinking about how to communicate and leverage communication for teachers. She's also really thinking about how do we create a roadmap that builds trust between families and teachers and students, et cetera. So I'm excited that she's going to be joining us tonight and leading us through this kind of GPS conversation to kind of guide us and steer us in how to use strong communication towards an intended destination. So with that, Dr. C, I'll turn things over to you, and thanks again for joining us and leading us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful to be here. Thank you, Sarah. I was thinking about your GPS piece, and I know probably some of our other educators are out there driving on 465 right now, and I was on 465 today for a whole long time, and it made me think about how that analogy is so good because we're all headed in the same destination around improving our communication as educators, and there's lots of different ways to get there. And so lots of different routes, and we're going to hear about some of those best practices tonight from other educators. Really just want to name that kind of what Sarah had said. I really enjoy leading conversations with teachers in our community. I feel like that every time I talk to a teacher, I learn something. And it's always even more powerful to put together a group of teachers and see what happens from that conversation. I think that's where really authentic learning takes place. So with that, we have some other educators with us tonight that's joining. And we know that the preparation can really be the key to this way to focus on communication and build trust with our families. So with that, we're going to welcome our other panelists to our space. Welcome. If you're driving, imagine fireworks and all kinds of fun stuff happening right now because we just welcome some folks. So joining us tonight, we have a former elementary teacher who is now pursuing their passion for music. We also have a high school AP African Studies and Social Studies teacher. And we also have a middle school science teacher. So all together, we're going to kind of exchange ideas. We're going to share experiences, discuss best practices, and welcome Sarah Locke. You want to say, hey, Sarah, say anything?
Hi, I'm very excited to get to chat with everybody tonight.
Awesome. Welcome, Nina West. Come on off.
Hello. That's all I have to say.
That's all good, Nina. That's cool. And Kitten Haynes, welcome.
Hello. Excited for a good conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, guys. All right. We're going to really jump in, really start thinking about this roadmap to success. And I just really want to name to our other educators out there, this is really interactive, right? So please continue to engage with us in the chat. And we're just going to start talking. Imagine we're all sitting in a coffee shop and we're having to get ready for these conferences. And we're like, why do these conferences even matter, right? So with that in mind, why do conferences matter? Kick us off, Sarah. What do you think?
So I just finished up being a second grade teacher for 2 years, and now I'm a elementary school music teacher in the same school. And what I've seen over the years of why conferences matter is, for me, they're really a bridge between you and another huge part of students. Kids only spend 20 to 15% of their lives in a classroom, whereas the whole other percent they're at home. And bridging that gap is very, 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 very important, because then you can have better communication and you can understand them better. You can find what makes them tick and provide them with more equitable education. So that's why I think conferences matter so much.
You see what you did there, Sarah, with the whole roadmap analogy. You talked about a bridge. Boom. Nina, what do you think? Why do conferences matter to you?
Yeah, when reflecting about this question, I think that conferences matter because, again, as Sarah stated, like, you are bridging the gap, again, with the bridge analogy. You're bridging the gap with this new student and this family. And so you need to understand just the different ways that the student operates. And it's important because some of the same ways that the student operates just within their everyday life, they're going to also operate that same way within class. And as teachers, a lot of times we see a lot of good and bad behavior, and it's important for us to understand how to deal with the behavior, whether good or bad.
Yeah, kind of that, like reading the room, right? Like looking for those traffic signals, right, of conference communication, and really your ability to really kind of stop and listen and see what's happening. Kenton, what would you add?
Yeah, kind of just building off of what Sarah and Nina were saying. I think there's the more obvious purpose of being just a progress update. So an open space for both teachers and parents to share highlights, like what's gone well throughout the year, but also the areas of concern. And then it's also a space for teachers and parents to kind of plan, and sometimes and the students there too, to plan what are we going to do about this area of concern going forward. And then I also think one of the areas we don't necessarily, or one of the more backstage purposes of parent-teacher conferences is really an opportunity for both teachers and schools to just build on that family engagement piece. So
Mm.
how are you interacting with your families? Are you inviting teachers to come out? Or are you inviting parents to come out to conferences? Do they feel welcome there? Is there materials prepared? Is it something that the school is actually using for a productive purpose, or is it just
Yeah.
another box on the checklist? Like, is there an
Mm.
actual purpose behind them?
Oh man, I'm really glad you brought that up. That because I was thinking about, putting my parent hat on. There's been so many times, Kenton, where I did feel like it was just a checkbox, right? And I was like, oh, we got to do this, and it's on the calendar, but I never really knew what the school did with the data, or if it really was important. And you bring up another point too, where it kind of sets the stage for that family engagement, right? Like it's one of the first events of the year, and it just really kind of starts building that trust in how you show up, and are you prepared. And I know we talked all this about this a little bit too, but I just think this other piece that was brought up in this part of the conversation is the importance of actually inviting the family. I was actually doing a family focus group in my other world today, and one of the things that the families were talking about was that they'll get all of these automated messages, right? So this particular family I was talking about has 4 students in the school, and they get these automated messages about these events. Hispanic Heritage is coming up, family conferences is coming up, but yet they don't ever get a personal invite. They don't get a personal call or a personal text. And so I love that you kept that in front of us. Thank you for that. So it makes me also think about we talk about family conferences. We can read about on paper. There's a lot of great articles and resources out there we can even talk about. And then we plan for it. We meet with our administrators, and there's a checklist of things we have to prepare for. And we put up the student work, and we set out the treats or whatever. And that's one side of family conferences. But then there is also another side where, think about a situation where maybe things weren't going the way you thought they were going to go as far as your communication. And all of a sudden there's some miscommunication, there's lack of communication, and you actually had to kind of stop the conversation and listen or yield to others, and maybe even listen with empathy, and that probably looked differently and even felt differently. When you kind of think about that, I know, Kent, we kind of ended with you, but maybe getting your voice back in this space. Can you share a time where maybe you experienced that, or a conversation you've had with others where you had to stop a conversation you were having with a family member and kind of redirect it?
Yeah, for sure. So I can think of one specific time where just during like the initial portion of the conversation where you're telling the parent how their student's doing in class. And I just mentioned that the student was kind of regularly opting out of work, and the parent kind of stopped me right there. And without delving too much into his situation, there was just lack of knowledge on my part that could have that caused me to make an assumption that could have been resolved with a simple like parent communication or just investigation into the situation further. And then like in that situation, like I realized I was wrong and kind of admitted to that. But then also kind of turning the conversation around to like the actionable portion of it. Like I understand the situation now, but at the same time, this doesn't like absolve the fact that the student's not doing any work. So now that I have the understanding of the situation, where do we go from here?
Wow, what I heard from that as a parent, you're acknowledging them.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way you said, where do we go
Yeah.
from here? And you're including them. Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah,
Nina, what do you think? Or Sarah, jump in. Anybody?
I just want to add on what Ken said. I just really like that you emphasize the we portion of it. I think that a lot of times parents come in and they do get those automated messages like Dr. C's talking about. They don't hear from a teacher, and then they come in and you only have 15 minutes and you've never done this before. And you're like, oh my God. And I've got to talk about hard things. Like, potential retention, or your grades are not doing well, or you're opting out of work, right? And it's easy for the parent to come in angry or upset, right? I had one parent who I said, hey, your child's up for potential retention. And she literally said, wow, that's a direct reflection of me as a parent, that she's potentially getting retained. And so in that moment, just, yes, stopping the conversation, listening with empathy and saying, no, it's not. You are amazing at what you do. Let's work together to make a plan, because sitting here and making yourself more and more upset, making the child upset, is not going to help you or the child or me get them where they need to be. So Kenton, you're awesome. Yes, it's definitely a we getting it together.
Great reminder. Yeah, that'd be a hard conversation, Sarah. What do you think, Nina? You got anything besides we? What are you thinking?
To jump in, I can definitely. So at my school, we don't have advisory, we have village, and I consider myself the ideology around village is that it takes a village to raise a child, but also I think as a village leader at my school, it's in, like, again, back to the bridge analogy, I am the bridge between the parent and the school. And I definitely remember there was a hard conversation that had to be had with one of my villagers. And again, like, using the languaging of we, the parent and I were not on the same page. And there was also a breakdown within communication between me and the school, but also the parent, and the parent did not feel as supported. And I think that at that time I wanted to be like really, really defensive. And I think that's a human nature and reaction. Like, no, we do this for your child and this and this. And I can name all the things that we do for you and etc. But I think in recollection, I should have just stopped and said, you know what, I apologize. And because in my personal opinion, you can't, as I'm learning and growing, you can't tell someone that they're wrong for how they feel, because that then creates a further disconnection between you and the parent, and that's not what we want. So in moments when you're having an unproductive conversation, I would listen and say and own up. Yeah, I am so sorry. I am trying my very best. Like, is there any other way, or what would you have rather I done in this situation, or how can I better support you, or how can we get on one accord, and etc. Because I feel like those are the only ways to stop an unproductive conversation, is to listen and yield, but also apologize and be very sincere and genuine within the matter. And I feel like if I would have done that, it would have smoothed over the relationship that I have with the parent. But because I didn't, it took, just now our relationship getting back on track. And so I think the languaging of we is very powerful, because it shows that it's not just you, it's not just me, it's us together. And I am going to utilize the support that you give me and vice versa to make sure that this is a partnership. We are together, we are one, we are unified in supporting your student, my student, and etc.
Nina, thank you. I recently saw your school leader, actually last week, and I was talking about you, and she was talking about how you were an important part of the village. So that makes so much sense when I hear you speak about it that way. And isn't that beautiful? Just, I don't know how the rest of you felt out there. And I was thinking about the emoji that Sarah Marshall asked us to put in the beginning, like, what emoji comes to mind. And before Nina started speaking and I was listening to Sarah Locke, my emoji was, anxiety. And then, I don't know, Nina started speaking and my emoji went to like yoga or something. I'm like, yeah, I want to be one accord. Like, right. How do we do that? And I really appreciate too, this idea of just you being vulnerable too, right? Like everyone on this call, like whether you're a part of our panelists or you're just joining us virtually, I think that's the part too, is just sharing real stories from real teachers about, real situations. And And we've all been in that situation where we didn't choose the best version of ourselves, or we didn't choose the right words. And boy, Nina's right. Even when she's talking about, I could feel it. Like, it's just so natural. You want to defend yourself, or you want to, maybe you're feeling underappreciated that day. Maybe you're feeling overburdened. You're feeling overworked. You didn't get your grades entered. And all of a sudden, you just let it all out. And if we can just remember Nina's conversation, just stopping, taking a breath, and, apologizing and regrounding yourself, and like, I'm sorry, this isn't going the direction I wanted to go. And like, back to the GPS, when you're going the wrong direction, what do? You stop and turn the car around, right? And even just naming that, right? And so just stopping, listening, turning the car around. And we've all had that parent. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine, like, where they come in and there's no smile, there's the stern face, there's the closed body language. And how do you, build that communication with them? Or if you have had a miscommunication, how do you repair it? And I do think just being your authentic self, Nina's version, that is, I'm sorry, let's start again. Really, really powerful. Thank you for that. Okay, so that, I think I'm feeling like from there, I know we've got some other people joining us, and what we're really talking about now is, how do you, so now we've kind of figured this piece out, where we know that we have active listening, we have empathy, we're focusing on the family, we're kind of, responding. But we also know that, like, we got to remember, what are the parents, the family members, the caregivers bringing into the conference with them, right? So maybe they are bringing a difficult call they've had with you, or maybe they're bringing some other baggage about, maybe they're mad at the PE teacher, right? Or maybe they're mad at the lunch lady, or they're mad at somebody. So when you kind of think about this, like, as we think about what it feels like to be a teacher, also thinking about what it could feel like to be a parent, right? And so I know for some parents, in doing some research on this topic about, why I'm not involved, and for all of our listeners out there, we'll share these resources too, and they're kind of interesting. There's a whole article called "Why I'm Not Involved: Parental Involvement from Parents' Perspective," and the idea there is that parents don't always feel welcome, and they don't feel like they're really part of the conversation, or they don't feel like the family conference is really what they need. So as you think about in your schools, and I know you're all at different grade levels, even our listeners out there, it seems like, and this could be wrong, but it seems like at the younger grades, our families are pretty involved, right? Bringing some tissue boxes in, and maybe even a cookie for the teacher, or, a little appreciation card or something. And it seems like as the students get older, that families can become less involved. So, I mean, I'm curious to what ideas do you have, regardless of the age of the students or your scenario? How do you keep families engaged? Right? How do you keep them coming to these conferences, and not just the conferences, but engaged in the communication, so this very important conversation starts happening? How do you keep them engaged? Anybody can jump in here. What do you think?
So for me, I think it's also, parents should be getting communication about their child throughout the year. And I feel like that's how you keep parents engaged, because like, it's about the good, it's also about the bad, but the parent knows, okay, I'm hearing from Miss So and so or Mr. So and so. They care about my child, so I'm going to keep interacting with them. And I can think about one particular moment where I have this really good relationship with a parent, and she hugged me and she was like, I knew you were going to be great. And I think that I think she felt that, because I would always respond to her. I was very responsive. I didn't let her messages just lie to the wayside. I know that we as teachers have a very, very busy schedule. I overstand, but I think keeping parents engaged means texting them, hey, your child did great today. I just wanted to let you know. Or, hey, your child is struggling today. What are some better ways that we, again, to Kenton's languaging, what are some better ways that we can support your child? Or also, what is something that I should be doing better? So that families are just not hearing you on conference days. Like, hey, you got to be here at 9 a.m. I need to see you and your child, etc. Like that becomes, it's not sincere, and parents can feel, oh, they're just trying to check off a box. They just want to meet with me because it's something that they have to do.
I feel like you might have just given us like a little extra tool here for our toolbox. Overstand. Tell us about that word.
Because I feel like understand's not enough. Like understand is like, yeah, we get it. No, I overstand. Like we need overstand in our vocabulary, because us as teachers and just people in general, I think we go through a lot. So when I say like I understand, I feel like that's very like subtle. Overstand is like I get it tremendous, like a tremendous amount.
Back to the emojis, I'm just thinking of a couple of parents I've had as teacher parent conferences, and when they were not happy with something I've said, some miscommunication. And what if I just said, listen, I understand? Like even saying I understand is not enough for you right now. Like imagine how that would just change the dynamics. I'm going to write that one down, Nina. All right. What else you guys got? Kitten, Sarah, anything else you want to add there?
So yeah, I think for going to the best practices piece, I think to bridge the gap for older students, I think like high school, even middle school teachers need to take use an example out of elementary school. Like even just thinking of how my own elementary school experience was, like it was an event. There was candy. I prepared this whole portfolio there. Like there was a purpose in going for it. Like, and I feel like in high school, and part of it just has to do with the fact that there's so many classes now. You show up, you meet with 6 different teachers, and then you go home. So I think like something high school teachers need to do is you need to build momentum. You need to have a purpose behind it. So something we do here at my school is we do student-led conferences. So that is almost like the student building like a portfolio, and they're going to lead the parent through their conference. They're going to comment on their overall GPA behavior. They're going to lead them through each of their classes. And a lot of it brings up like good conversation pieces. Like the parents are asking the right questions. Well, why does your work look like that in this class, but not in this class? And then that's where I can chime in and maybe point them in the right direction of how to communicate with that teacher, or maybe it highlights some gaps that they're having with the content. So I think really the key is just like building momentum behind the conference, and then like giving parents a reason to come to the conference. I'm not just getting a progress update, but it feels like an event when I go. The school put time and effort into holding this event, and I feel welcome in this space.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, even like when you're talking about that and just having a portfolio and it being focused on what the student's doing well. And there was one article I was reading, like, why don't we call it a progress conference? And that's kind of what you're talking about, right? With you're looking at the student's progress, and they're involved and they're engaged and they're leading it. And it's just meaningful. And there's something kind of sacred about it. Great reminder.
I was just sitting over here like, yes, Kenton, yes. You don't have to be young to have some fun, okay, friends? Like you can bring the elementary, you can bring the fun to these older kids. They love it. The parents love it. Everybody loves it. Everybody wants to have fun. And I know this is more of a question for older grades. So I'll just say one more thing. I think we really need to stamp it is so important to try and have these conversations in person. It is so important to actually meet with these parents. My first year of teaching, I really was like, oh, I can do these over the phone and they count? Oh, great. That's fine. I'll just check my little box. I met with them or I called them. It's fine. And then I was getting all these upset parents, and I was like, why are people upset? Why is this not working? It's because we never sat down to actually have a conversation, and you can't read people's emotions over a telephone. You just can't. And I know with COVID, it made even things even harder for people to want to be in person, to want to come in and do stuff, because I can just hop on a Zoom call, right? But having that one-on-one time to really sit, be like, oh, this is what my teachers look like. These are who they are, is just invaluable. So it's just, yes, 100%.
That in person. Yeah. Oh boy. I'm glad you mentioned that. It makes such a huge difference, doesn't it? There's still something about that. You just can't really replace the dynamics for that. And there's just something, I don't know, more communal, right, about that. Back to Nina's point about being a village, yeah, that is a really great point. Sarah, though, Nina, go. Yeah.
I was just going to add one more thing. I just think back to Sarah's point, I think it's very important to keep families engaged and like talk to them whenever. So like if you see a family of a child that you like have been waiting to meet, like run to them during the car line, like, hey, I want to, and I feel like parents feel that energy where it's like, oh, this teacher is actually wanting to be involved in my child's life. And so talk to them. Again, progress calls and etc. I feel like when we're thinking about bridging the gap, I think also in high schools, there's not a lot of back to school nights that I've heard of. I could be wrong, but I think when we're thinking about the importance of back to school nights, they're important so that the families can meet the teachers. And again, to Sarah's point, like it's important to make a face to a name and not just like, hey, I've heard this person over the phone or this person sent me a text, which is why like if you need to talk to a parent, I would talk to them and make sure that hey, like I just wanted to meet you and just let you know that like I am here for your child. I'm going to be supportive of your child throughout this year and etc. You can do it doesn't have to be a long, super drawn out conversation, but but the parent should feel that you are caring for their child.
Really, yeah, great reminder. And it's somehow the face-to-face piece. And you're all saying this, and I'm curious to what some of our folks out there virtually think too. But it reminds me of when I was attempting to increase my my family conference attendance and get people involved. And a new family had moved into the school that I was teaching at, and they actually they were an international family from Hong Kong, and they had taken this job. They were still they were coming here to work, I think, for Eli Lilly or a pharmaceutical company locally, and they were very anxious about moving into a community where there wasn't a lot of individuals that looked like them or had a common language or common cultural traditions. And I remember that they just I had a difficult time connecting with them in the beginning. And I remember I reached out to the mother and I said, hey, what does connection look like to you? How would you like to communicate? Because they weren't coming to some of these things. And I still remember her saying, well, we need to have tea. And I remember thinking, well, okay, how do we do that? We can go to Starbucks. No, she brought in a teapot and she brought in tea and we had tea. And I remember it took a little bit more time than I imagined, because as teachers were like, go, 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 run, 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 gotta go, 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 gotta keep moving. And I just remember we sat down for like 30 minutes and we had tea. And once we had tea, then she was engaged. But I had to stop and ask her, what did communication look like and sound like for her? And what did she need from me? And she needed me to sit down and have tea with her. It was really powerful. It's a good reminder. A lot of what you were saying. Sarah, were you going to add something? Do you remember? Nope. Okay. I couldn't remember. I think I was going to ask you something else. I guess maybe thinking, Sarah, moving from elementary to music, in any of these things we're talking about, is it different for specials, right?
Yeah. So at our school for specials, what they do is they go around to any class that they want and kind of talk to parents. I make a point to talk to parents all the time. We have events all the time. We did have back to school night. We just had Grand Adult Day the other day, which was so fun.
What is that? That sounds cool. Grand
It's
Adult
so
Day.
fun. It's just anyone in your child's life who plays a grand role. It could be a grandparent, ideally, but a lot of kids don't have grandparents, or grandparents are mom and dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To them. So it's just any grand adult in your life. They come, they get donuts, they get juice, they get to pull the kids out of class. We did like a Kahoot, and like some of the questions were like, "What's this?" And it's like a floppy disk. You know what I mean? Like some really fun, cute stuff, just community. And then you walk around and you're just like, "Hi, I'm the music teacher." And they're like, "Oh my goodness, like your child has a wonderful voice." And they're like, "Oh, I know, I hear it all the time." But yeah, it's the same for me. I just get all the kids, not just my little 20.
Yeah, such a good, Grand Adult. I hope all of our virtual listeners out there, so inclusive and really honors the family structure, right? A lot of the families I work with today, it was mostly extended family members that was really involved in the students' lives. So great reminder. Thank you for that. Again, we're gonna have some great resources we'll be sharing too. Different articles and research on topic, but we're going to keep moving because we also know that your time is valuable. And so let's jump on our last topic that I really want to talk about just for a few minutes is kind of thinking about these interactions, these communications where sometimes you might have a disagreement. And so you may or may not have had a parent where, they're showing up in the conversation, you're trying to communicate, and they're like, "Well, Nina, I hear your village. I hear your overstand, but my child is never wrong." Right? And so I'm curious, again, we'll share a resource with you on addressing disagreement and really how to work with disagreeable parents. But when you have these kind of situations, whether you have maybe a parent or family member that's maybe second guessing you as a teacher, administration, maybe even harassing you via text or voicemail or email, or maybe even some passive aggressive behavior, just these very tense, difficult situations with parents, like what works, folks? Like, what do you do? Like, do you have any go-tos? Anybody?
So my go-to is, first of all, we got to remember these are all humans, right? And so if you're
Right.
disagreeing,
Oh, good one.
if you're disagreeing with any human, the first thing you want to do is find something that you do agree on. So my thing with parents is finding common ground. So if you're like, "No, my child's a great reader," and I'm like, test scores don't show that, and I've seen your child read and they can't read like that. That's not helpful, right? That's just completely shutting down their opinion, right?
Yeah, I was getting mad at you, Sarah, and you're saying that right now, right?
Exactly. So instead, you could be like, "You know what? Sally is really great at making friends. Sally's really great at math. Sally's really great at word problems. Sally's really great at these other things." Or even like, that's why you got to get to know these kids, right? Be like, "You know what? I think she does have the potential to be a great reader. Let's find some books about baseball. She really likes baseball. Let's find some books about baseball, or let's find some books about cooking. She loves cooking. Maybe that will help her, be more interested." Also, at the same time, you want to come with information that's also like, I like to say, like kind of sprinkled in. So like, I know from the science of reading or whatever that the students are more likely to perform better in reading if they're interested in the topic or they have background knowledge in the topic. So let's find books that have background knowledge that she's interested in. And then reaffirming it with that "we" that Kenton was talking about. Like,
Nice.
instead of fighting about this, about "I think she's not great at reading and you think she's amazing at reading," let's find a way to make her even better than what she was, right?
So, Sarah, you had some great words there. And Nina, we know you're the village. But Kitten, let's pretend like you're a very early career teacher and you don't have those words, right? And you can't really think of them in the moment. What do you do?
I think one thing that I like to do is I just like to come solutions oriented. So a lot of from what I was hearing from Sarah's answer is that you have to focus on like how we move forward. Like we might disagree about what the issue is, and even if you have the facts, you have it behaviors documented. Parents aren't going to want if they're disagreeing with you. They're not going to want to hear that at the moment. So you have to come solutions oriented, and you have to discuss like you have to. I like to remind them like, hey, I'm here because I care about your child too. I want to see them succeed. What is going to be our plan of action going forward? Because something in the status quo is not working.
I like the way you just keep it moving forward, moving forward. Nice. Good advice. Need anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I just wanted to, like, when thinking as an early career teacher, like with the second question, like, how do you actually maintain a healthy and productive conversation?
Yes.
Because I think when we're thinking about disagreeable parents, it's a parent who is very protective. And again, that's a natural human reaction. And I think that as a teacher or just a human in general, you can empathize with the fact that this parent feels very protective. So again, back to what Sarah was saying, let's talk about, or Sarah and Kenton, let's talk about the solutions that we can come up with that so that we can devise a plan. But when talking about maintaining a healthy and productive conversation, I really think it's important to do not point the finger like, no, you're wrong, your student, etc., because that does not create someone who is already protective to push down their guard. And so then I would maintain like a level tone, very monotone, like, hey, I apologize if there's anything that I said that offended you. Again, like, I want to be a support for your child. I understand where you're coming from. And I'm just prefacing this based on what I've seen. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Are you seeing anything different? Again, I feel like when you're asking those guys, I would seek to be curious in order to maintain a healthy, productive conversation. Seek to be curious because you can then allow the parent to give you information, and then you can give them information, and that will create a productive conversation that just flows. Like how we're flowing with like Sarah, like Kenton, like we're all having a conversation because I'm not like, no, Kenton, you're wrong. This is how you do it. Or like, no, Sarah, I disagree with what you said. I'm like, I didn't think about it like that. Like, oh, like, okay, Sarah, that makes total sense. Sarah, what can I be doing better? And etc. And I feel like that makes people feel more comfortable if you approach difficult conversations and seeking clarity and just being eager to be curious.
Boy, great points. Okay, so some takeaways I heard from you all. I really heard this idea of focusing on solutions, right? Being curious, definitely active listening. That idea of we showing appreciation, acknowledging, the family. That solutions oriented plus being curious equals great advice and happy parents. Truth. Love this idea of a partnership, being mindful, respectful. So many great takeaways here. All right, folks, we are getting ready to kind of wrap up this session as we're focused on our time here. Again, really encourage anyone out there who wants to include any final comments to jump in. But I can't stop thinking about this roadmap to effective communication, and really want to thank all the folks that we had joining us tonight. And I know that you already gave some great last words, some last advice on some key takeaways there. Any other final thoughts, like a last sentence or two before we turn this part of our show back over to Sarah from Teach Indy?
When reflecting, I feel like a lot of schools provide different resources for teachers. And so I would say, like, for veteran teachers, if you notice that someone who's early within their career, I would say, like, hey, I see that you're really anxious. Would you like to role play? Like, I can be the parent, you can be the student. And then that can provide the first year teacher to feel more confident, or someone who's getting into the new career or just trying to find their footing. And then you also, as the veteran teacher, can provide more support so that when they're first meeting with the parent, they feel more confident. And again, like, it might not take away all of the nervousness that they feel, but they at least have more resources than just going into the conversation without any added tools or additional tools.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Great reminders. Anyone else?
I can say kind of advice, I guess, to more early on teachers. I think for me, in my experience with my first parent teacher conferences, it's very easy to kind of just, tell the parent, especially if the child's sitting there, that they're doing great, and just move through the conferences. It's a very anxious experience, but this is a time for you to plan and this child's future in your class. It's a time to help them be successful. So you have to be honest, and it's a time to have those difficult conversations. But I think by attending talks like this and speaking to veteran teachers, you can learn how to manage those difficult conversations.
And I think for me, the biggest piece has been just having a growth mindset, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to mess up. Like Nina said, like, she's reflecting back, like, oh, I wish I handled that better. But we're all growing and we're all changing. And so being able to learn from things that have happened and be open to any opportunity of growth. My parent may teach me something new. Dr. C may teach me something new. Nina might text me tomorrow and be like, hey, did you know about this? You got to be open to grow and open to change, and just try. It's all good.
Thank you, everyone. We could continue to have this conversation, but our time is up. I know we want to get other voices in the space, and we've saved some time for any of our virtual folks that's attending us to also throw any questions they may have in the chat. And we'll go ahead and monitor that too. I know as we're monitoring that, I know there's also some next step information from Sarah Marshall.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again to our panelists for just sharing your wisdom. I tell you, every single time we bring teachers on, we leave so much wiser. So thank you, all three of you, and Dr. C for moderating our conversation today. As always, we want to make sure that we get you some of the resources that Dr. C mentioned, in addition to other resources. So in the chat, we're going to drop a link for a survey, very short, and it really will just get you access to some additional resources. So if you don't mind just taking that survey real quick, then we can send over some of the materials that were referenced today and some additional ones. Also, if you have a resource that you have from conferences that you use, that's great. I heard some great resources around like student-led conferences. Not everybody does that. So if you've got a great blueprint to go with our template, right, to go with our GPS, if you've got a good Google Map version of how you walk through your conferences, we would be super open to that. So again, if you don't mind taking a minute to complete the survey, that would be great. And then the last thing that I will share is one of the things that's helpful for us at Teach Indy, and I think Sarah mentioned this earlier, is it's great to do these conversations online. It's equally as cool and sometimes even better when you bring people together in person. So we have our first in-person workshop. Our Workshop Wednesday series kicks off next week, where we're going to actually be working and discussing building relationships with students and families. It really builds on these last two conversations that we've had. This is a free event for teachers to attend. It's downtown at the Cohatch, and we will actually have a really fun launch party at the same space right after this workshop. So we'd love to have you come down. You get to have a conversation with educators to discuss just how are you building relationships? What's working? What do you need support with? And then, we'll have some fun, because teachers love to have fun. So I think with that, I will just say thank you again to everyone for joining us. Thanks for those that were active in the chat this evening. And we look forward to seeing you at our workshop series next Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.